What's going on, guys? Welcome to another episode of the Clean Libertarian Podcast, and I hope you had a fantastic Thanksgiving. I know me and mine did. We ate lots and lots of good food and got to sit around and visit with family that we probably won't see again until next year, but you know what? That's the name of the game, right? That's how it goes. At any rate, I hope that you're practicing self-care. I hope you're taking care of yourself as we roll into this next holiday, aka Christmas. You got the lights up, you got the music on, repeat every damn department store you go into, but no matter what you do, make sure you take time to practice self-care. If you need to, revert back to the meditation episode. Do some guided meditation. I said guided medication. Hey, you do you. Anyway, so what better way to roll into the next holiday than to have on a story of recovery? And I have a great one lined out for you guys today. This is Ollie. He is a friend of mine that I met on Twitter. And this dude was someone who worked a great program, has built a life for himself, and overcome a lot of different odds. There's a lot of wisdom in here, a lot of compassionate wisdom. And that's kind of one of those things I heard said in a meeting here lately, that honesty without compassion is cruelty. And Ollie is one of those cats who not only worked an honest program, but he did so compassionately, and he helped spread that to other people as well. And so there's a lot of great wisdom in this, a lot of great knowledge, and I hope you guys enjoy it. And so without any further ado, here is Ollie. All right. What's up, Ollie?
Not much, man. Thanks for having me on.
Man, this has been one I've been looking forward to. When it comes to Liberty Twitter, you have the people who scream constantly. There's a lot of us. And then you have the more measured voices that really bring some nuance and just post good content. And you fall within that class of individual on there.
Well, thank you.
Yeah. So just for the audience, Ollie, you are founder of the Liberty Quill. You're a freelance writer. What other things do you do?
Yeah, so I founded the Liberty Quill, which is, for anybody who doesn't know, it's basically, I created it really to give a voice or a platform to anybody who is looking to create and kind of express individualist thought through, creative exercise. That can be an article, it can be a poem, it can be some graphic design piece, whatever, just to be able to host that for people through the Liberty Quill, give them a little bit of exposure, maybe expand the reach. I also offer some soft editing. I'm willing to review work, because a lot of times people have really good things to say, but they stress out because of grammar or spelling or whatever, or I can help with that. I don't charge for that. I just really want to encourage people to be creative, and because it's very cathartic. It's cathartic for me, and maybe that's what helps when you mention that maybe I don't do as much screaming as the next guy. I think it's because I get the screaming out in different ways, and that's either putting pen to paper or whatever. So yeah, I spent some time on the Liberty Quill. I have some bylines at Mises.org and out of the UK, Mallard, out of the UK. Aside from that, I'm married and have 3 kids, and we're a homeschooling family. So, that has some demands, I guess. And I actually I use this kind of loosely, but I guess I'm the lay pastor of a home church. So we opened up our home and we do home church, and there's reasonings behind that. We're not anti-church building or anything, but we just really like the decentralized nature of home church. We like the effect it's had on our children and their ability to speak up and be a part of, and pray openly in front of other people. So we home church, we homeschool. I've got the Liberty Quill, kind of do some freelance writing outside of the Liberty Quill. And then I'm actually employed. We live in a rural part of Canada on the East Coast, and I'm employed actually as a federal employee on a military base here rurally. And yeah, so I'm kind of behind enemy lines, I guess, to a certain degree. I kind of feel like when I go in there, it's I gotta mind my P's and Q's. Privately, I have a lot of issues with the scope and the size of government, and you know their overreach in our lives. But I guess for now, that's where I find myself working.
Yeah.
Um, yeah, I mean, I got out of the military, so it was kind of a natural transition. I took the military uniform off, and then just kind of got a job as a civil servant. So that's kind of what
Uh,
keeps me busy. Yeah.
so you mentioned, that you do the homeschool thing. I'm curious. I know that tends to be a point of contention here in the States. Is it looked at favorably in Canada, or is that still?
No, it's probably the same. It's probably got the same pushback. I know that where we are rurally, there's a great network. So as far as how is it looked within the community, I think a lot of people are familiar with it, or at least heard of it, or know a family that homeschools, right? So there's not this stigma or this unknown. I think a lot of people recognize it's around them here,
Okay.
but it's the same old stuff, right? Like, oh well, does your wife have a teaching background? Is she a teacher? Or, well, are you afraid they're gonna be weird and unsocialized? Like, it's classic textbook arguments or concerns, right? So
Right.
yeah.
All right. Well, that's, you know, one of those things that I wish we could pull off. We're not there. We did take our daughter out of, traditional school and put her on an online course
Okay.
last school year. And it's just, we messed up because we didn't already establish kind of like a socializing network for her, because that was the aspect she missed out on. And so we got her, she hated it naturally. I mean, she's cooped up in her room all day, man, looking at a computer. Of course she's going to get depressed. But we're kind of seeing how she does. She's back in public school this year, and so far so good. But once that goes, man, we're going to do it all different. We're going to,
Yeah. Now there's a lot, there's a lot that goes into the decision. And I mean, everything from the child is used to the public school system, or at least being, leaving the home every day and socializing in that way. You have to, take into consideration how the child feels, I think, and how the child is doing. But also, like families that are used to double income, I don't, I don't judge anybody who says, like, I really wish I could do it, but for us to lose half of our income. I mean, for us, it just happened kind of organically. And my wife and I got married. We were both working when we got married, but then soon, I think about a year later, we had our first child, and she was at home. And then we had a second and a third. And so we were already kind of dealing with one income as we were having more children. You know what I mean? So it kind of grew on us naturally. And then at some point, when our eldest got almost to school age, she said, I'm kind of thinking homeschooling. And so it was I want to say it was easier for us because we weren't looking at any change financially. We were just, when we decided, okay, well, we won't add income. We will continue with the lifestyle that we're used to. So again, right, I'm not gonna, it's none of my business really what other people do.
there it is, man.
It really isn't.
There it is.
We keep trying to stick our noses in, well, I do it this way and this works for me, and I've got the moral high ground in this area, so I want to apply this to everybody else. Like, it's none of my business. Like,
Right.
we just follow our convictions, and that's it, so.
Man, we need more of that in today's culture, that's for sure. But Ollie, I brought you on so you could share your story of recovery. That's one of the things you reached out to me. We've been following each other for a little while, but you reached out to me and said, you'd been in recovery. And I really wanted to hear it. I wanted the audience to hear it. So I'm gonna put the ball in your court and just take it back where you are now. It's all good.
All right. Yeah, I mean, I sobered up in 2007. I was in my very, very late 20s at that point. And so, I was probably a good decade in. So it was about a 10-year span for me. Yeah, it's always interesting to have somebody ask you, tell us about that period. Or I'm not one that spends too much time trying to qualify myself as an addict, or get into the nitty gritty of the stories, because I don't want to trigger anybody who might be listening and is new in sobriety, and I definitely don't want to glorify it. But I was fortunate enough to be involved in a lot of sports growing up. So I was the type of kid that was in a sport every season. And I think without realizing it, that kind of filled up a hole that I had, right? And it kind of gave me an identity. And obviously, sports, you're physically active, and it's scheduled, and there's a competitive nature to it, and you can attach goals to that. And so it had a lot of good things, right? It offered a lot of good things. So that really took me up through middle school. And aside from a few blips in high school of like some random field party, down in a Mickey, a Silent Sam vodka, and not realizing like you just can't do that. You can't drink it like Kool-Aid, right? And then being totally, right. Aside from a few one-offs, it wasn't really an issue. It was just some mistakes, or some youthful learning opportunities, I guess. There was nothing, there was no lifestyle or patterns developing. It was just some one-offs. But what happened is, after high school, literally after high school, I remember finishing up in the summer. So I graduated, and then the summer I finished up baseball. And I remember walking off the field last time off the baseball diamond. I played baseball for like 13 years. And I remember getting really emotional and thinking, I don't think I recognized it at the time, but I think I was scared. I think I thought, like, I'm not going off to college in the States to play ball, or, I'm not like where I knew I was going to university, but that was the studies part. But that whole other identity piece as an athlete was just gone. So then I started going to university, and started getting into Class A stuff. So, I had kind of messed around with pot, messed around with drinking. University pub, I was starting to drink a little bit more. But what happened was, I think like at least once a month I was going to raves and kind of doing the ecstasy, and that kind of progressed to some ketamine and some I don't know what they called it at the time. It was basically aviation fuel, but just kind of huffing aviation fuel, like these things that kind of went with this whole trip. So there was definitely a leap there, where all of a sudden I went from this kind of athletic guy to drinking a little bit. But then, like, when I go out on the weekends, it was like party hard, like no sleep, kind of really experimenting with stuff, and, definitely starting to test the brain, like, or test it or try and burn some holes in it. Not exactly sure, but so there was that period. And then, maybe a year later, so by now I'm about 20 or 21, or maybe about 20, it's becoming very clear that I'm not focused at university, and I'm going there for all the wrong reasons. So I didn't finish university. I withdrew. And then I got into the coke. And so I kind of left the rave scene, because I was like, I'm looking around thinking, like, I think like a lot of these girls are like 15, 16, like maybe I shouldn't be here. You know what I mean? Like, I don't know. I just kind of had this, like, I don't know. I want to party, and I'm liking this lifestyle of escape, and filling this hole with this new identity, but maybe I can shift it and do something else. So then I started hanging, I kind of got introduced to some DJs, and then it was kind of the club life. Because I grew up in an urban spot. So, city of roughly 1 million people. So there was clubs and bars and all that kind of stuff. So the progression was cocaine in the clubs. And basically, I after about 2 or 3 years of that, I moved across the country to Montreal. And the only reason I'm willing to say that is because anybody who knows Montreal would know that if you're trying to relocate and do a fresh start and maybe clean up, you did not move to Montreal. That's the last place you want to go. So great place by day, great restaurants, great arts. But boy, when that sun goes down and the neon lights go up, it is, I mean, for lack of a better term, it is Sin City to the max. Like everything, speakeasies, like the city doesn't stop. It just doesn't, right? So anyway, so that really didn't help. And I remember my mom visiting at one point when I was out there. So I'm in my mid-20s at that point. My mom flew out and she was visiting. And I was working somewhere. I was functional, I was a functioning addict for sure. Like I was, if I partied hard all night, like I went into work, and I probably didn't look my best. And, without realizing it, probably more people than I realized probably knew something was up, but I thought I was pretty good at hiding it. I highly doubt it, right? Like the sweats and the, bowling ball pupils usually kind of give it away, right? So
yeah.
but anyways, so she came out and visited, and I'd had a new position at work, and like I was working in banking at the time, and they gave me some new position. I remember we're sitting on a park bench and she looks at me, and I'm doing stuff that I never dreamed I'd be doing, right? Like I'm living a lifestyle, a fast lifestyle, an uncommitted lifestyle, a reckless lifestyle, really taking chances. And she looks at, and I'm at a point now where it hadn't so much happened before I left, but once I got to Montreal, I started getting into more stuff where, all I'm going to say is now I was being haunted by these things that were like I'm unlovable, right? Like I'm unlovable now. Like I'm just doing stuff. I'm living so fast that I don't even love myself. Like this has gone far beyond I just like to have a good time. This has actually gone to the point where I'm like, great. Like now I'm doing things that will be forever part of my past. And, it's important to mention that, at this point, I didn't grow up with religion or spirituality. I didn't grow up with the idea of God. And so, the idea that, the idea of forgiving myself, but also like understanding that I can be forgiven, and understanding that I can actually become something new was foreign to me. So all I knew was I will be haunted by all of my mistakes and all of my, my, I guess, for lack of a better word, what I would consider today my moral failings. I'll be haunted by that forever. So anyways, we're on the park bench and she says, you know what, Ollie, good things always happen, because she's kind of congratulating me on the new position. She says, good things always happen to you because you're just such a good guy. And I just lost it.
Oh,
and
man.
Like, right. And I didn't see it coming, but it just hit me. And she's like, looking at
what
me,
just happened?
Like, okay. Right. Like,
yeah.
So now she's kind of like, that's not at all what I was expecting. And I said, yeah, so that kind of, I kind of felt like, no guy in his mid-20s necessarily wants to open up to his mom, I think, like that. And I didn't share everything with her, but I think I sensed this is an opportunity. Like, I'm drowning here, and I just broke in front of her, which I didn't see coming, but I think I better use this opportunity. Like, if I can't, like, if I can't open up to my mom, who I know loves me unconditionally, although I know it would be hard for her to hear this, then who am I going to open up to, right? Like, as far as feeling safe. Anyways, it's not to say to people, go and open up to your parents, but for me, that was just the way it unfolded. There was an opportunity there in that park, so I shared a little bit with her. I cleaned it up a little bit, but basically I acknowledged like the cocaine, and I acknowledged that I had had a little bit of an inheritance from when somebody had passed, and like I had just burned through that, right? And it had been coming up in conversations all the time, and okay, well, you have that, and right. And so it was just an opportunity to say, like, that money's all gone, and it's all gone. And this is why, and this is how I've been living since really, I left university, and like, they had no idea. So that was a start. And she flew back, and during the visit, she was like really like just, compassionate and everything. And she didn't really push too much, but when she flew back, she reached out after a couple days and said, I didn't address it at the time, but like, are you thinking you should get some help? Right? I was like, yeah, I should probably get some help. So my story is basically, in my mid-20s was the first time that I knew, like, I've got some serious issues. My life's unmanageable for sure. I can't stop for any, I can stop when I'm broke or my account's overdrawn, or I'm like extremely, like, I'm in that shame piece, like, right, that completely, like, I have no money, like, I don't want to use because I have no money. I'm ashamed, and like, I'm so dejected, I can't face the world. Oh, sure. Yeah. Look, I could put like 3-4 clean days together. But the minute I started feeling a little bit better, and, I had means again, it didn't matter, right? Like, the minute I felt anything, it didn't matter. Like, anything triggered it. Good news, bad news, certain day of the week. Like, the triggers were endless. It was just because all I knew was to associate partying with like life, basically, right? The good, the bad, anything. So I kind of started the clinical side of it. So no steps, no working with people in the same position, like leaning on one another, just straight like going to these places and talking. And I started that. I think I was dry, basically. I stayed off everything. And like, I lived with guys who partied. Granted, they didn't party like I did. Like, I've always been with all the roommates I've ever lived with, like even the DJs, I've always been the worst. Like, I was just always, it was just, yeah, like, I was just always like, why does everybody else put the little flap of Coke in the bedside table and go to bed? Right?
I get it. Yes.
And why am I always the one knocking on Buddy's door going, hey man, like, if you're not going to use that, like, can I just pay you back tomorrow? Yeah, sure. Like, what? Right? Like, or why was I always the one that we're out and it's all about a good time, and we're out on a patio somewhere on a nice summer day, and people are having their pint of beer and talking, and I'm having my pint of beer, and once it gets half down, I'm already looking over my shoulder going, where's the waiter? Because I better order the next one. Right? And it took me a long time to understand that's not normal. Right? And that's the aspect that, to jump forward a little bit to today, that's the aspect that, although I consider myself a recovered addict and a recovered alcoholic, all I've recovered from is the obsession. right? And the chaos that goes with acting on that obsession. But I will never recover from the fact that, like, I put things in my body that alter my state of mind, and for whatever reason, I don't want to stop, right? And I'm always going to be chasing that. And so I got a little bit of help in my mid-20s, stayed dry. I don't think I was happy because I was living with guys that were smoking pot and drinking, and then I'd be like, oh, it's all good, guys, like, don't feel bad about me. And then, like, you know, an hour later, I'm like, okay, I'm going to go to my room. And so a lot of isolation. I think I read a lot, just did a lot. Like, it was an interesting season in my life. Then I moved back. I moved back across the country to where I grew up, and I said, okay, new beginning. So I flew across, and I got best job I ever had. And I thought, well, because I've got the best job I ever had, like, now I know better. Like, I've been given a new chance, and, you know, I'm clean, and yeah, I'm going to do it for work because I don't want to mess up work because, yeah, like that ever works. Like any, right? Like any superficial exterior reason ever, like, no. So anyway, like, you know, the true addict and alcoholic, like, can't even stay, you know, short of the work that needs to be done, can't even stay sober or dry, you know, for those that they love around them. So how was I going to stay sober for a job, right? Like, but I didn't know that. So I start the job, and I just start up again. So I start up again, and like a lot of addicts, alcoholics know, you know, for whatever reason, when you take a little break and you start back up, like, you just, it increases exponentially. I don't know if deep down, like, you know, there's something saying like, you know, you held out so long, you got to make up for lost time, or I don't know what the issue is, but, you know, I started back, and it really was the Coke for me. Like, I drank just to kind of, you know, grease the wheels a little bit. And the minute, like, I'm talking the minute I had 3 drinks in me, I could be out with buddies, and it was supposed to be like, we're going out for some eats, and we're going to have a few beers, and we're going to go home. You work in the morning, whatever. I was 2-3 drinks in, and, you know, I'm old enough that, you know, like, not everybody had a cell phone. So I would be like at a payphone or something, already calling my buddy to, like, hey, I'm at this restaurant, come out, meet me at this place, right? Like that's, and it's funny because I hung out with guys that did Coke and were DJs and were, you know, they the nightlife was where they made a living. And so they were, you know, they understood. And yet I was so secretive. Like, I really was. Like, I could be out with those guys, and I would still go off and, you know, tell my dealer, find me over here. And then I'd tell the guys, you know, I got to go to the washroom, and I'd go and score and then come back, and they wouldn't know any, right? Like, that's not normal behavior. Like,
nope.
At all. And I remember, you know, near the end, being out a few different times with people in the scene, and them, like, saying to me, you know, Ollie, the day may come where, and I really appreciate this. It's not what got me sober, but I think it speaks to their character. They said, the day may come where you call us and you say, like, let's go do something, and we might say no, right? And I think that was them letting me know, like, yeah, we have a lot of similarities, and you know, we like the same kind of music, and we go to the same kind of spots, but, like, you bail, like, you'll just take off, you'll disappear, you'll, like, we don't, you know, right? And we don't know that we want to hang out with a guy like that, right? So there were signs there. So so I guess, yeah, so I went downhill. I went to the employee assistance program at my company. And I said, I got a problem. I don't want to lose my job. It's probably headed that way if this continues, like my life's unmanageable kind of thing. But I didn't understand anything. And I thought that I'm a Coke addict. So like I'm special, right? My problem's Coke, right? Like
I'm unique.
yeah. My problem.
Yeah.
I'm a high class Coke head, right? Like
Yeah.
I need somebody to help. I need
I
somebody
love
to
it.
help me with my Coke problem.
Mhm.
It doesn't mean anything that, years ago I was like huffing jet fuel and doing whatever. Like that didn't demonstrate that I was much more than, right? Like I just couldn't put anything together. So what happened was I went to this great recovery house, and the reason I say it's great is because that's where I ended up sobering up, but that's not where I sobered up initially, because I went for an interview and I was like, this place is more for drunks. Like I got a Coke problem. And I remember the guy, like old, crusty, like hard as nails counselor, right? Like, oh yeah, you got a Coke problem, eh? Oh yeah. And and I remember thinking, right? Like thinking, I don't like this guy. Like this guy doesn't get me. This guy's like a drunk. Like he's never even done Coke. He doesn't get my problems. So I didn't go there. I went back to employee assistance program. I said, I need a place to helps me with Coke. So I got sent way up north, hours away, like 10-hour drive to like an in-care facility, basically lockdown, 60 days. And there was benefits to it. There was counselors. I worked the first, I must have worked the first 5 steps there. Which, I mean, that's huge. I mean, that's I mean, I got to the point where God at that point was, I think I might've been agnostic. Like, there's a part in the big book where it talks about, we looked up at, a star-filled sky or whatever, a starry lit sky. I don't know how it says it. And we wondered, that resonated with me. I said, you know what? I've always thought I was an atheist. I don't know how many times I'd look around me and go, there is so much that I don't know. But it was fleeting, right? I just snuffed it out. I didn't inquire into anything. I wasn't looking for spirituality so at that center, I was becoming more open. I did some of the work, right? I did the inventory. I learned a little bit. It wasn't as thorough. I didn't have a sponsor. It was very, it was a little more clinical and polished. But I did speak to a priest at that point, and it was the first time that like the real dirt, the real skeletons, like when I mentioned on that park bench, there's just stuff you wouldn't tell your mom. Like that would be hurting her, right? Like, what is the benefit of telling her that kind of thing? That was my first opportunity where I went like that was the most unnatural thing. It was like, how am I going to tell another human being that could potentially literally tell other people all of my garbage? Again, at that point, I'm stuck in I'm so important that this priest cares enough that he's going to go spill my garbage to somebody else, like whatever. Right. But that was a real fear. And literally that was extremely uncomfortable, and I got through it, and I went and I did this, and I've done this, that was the start, I think. And I got out, and I was 60 days somewhat sober because I had started the work. Somewhat sober, definitely healing. I went back to the city, started working again, lasted maybe 30, 40 days, stopped going to meetings. And it's funny because what actually set me off, what set me off was, really what set me off is probably stop going to meetings and, not like God's a huge part of my life. And I know that, in the program, it's really the God of one's understanding. And if people really aren't, comfortable with God, then it's, well, are the people in the rooms a power greater than yourselves? And I really admire that. And I think that, the first and foremost, the point of these programs is to get people sober. And so it doesn't matter that today I'm a professing Christian and I have a home church. That there's not, the rooms aren't a place to talk about that, right? That's not where the rooms need to go. But anyways, so I think, I wasn't really pursuing God enough at that point. I was relying on the rooms, which is good. I didn't have a sponsor, and then I stopped going to meetings. But then, so that's really what set me on the path. But the night where I relapsed, it's very interesting because this is kind of word to the wise, right? So I had a prescription to Dexedrine, which helps to treat, ADD and some forms of ADHD. And that was an old prescription that I had refilled because I felt, this is such the addict, like, wow. And I couldn't even see it, right? I was having some issues at work and I was like, I remember that in my last year of high school, I took some tests and they said, you know what, you're borderline ADD, but you're borderline enough that we can put this on file for you. You can have a prescription of Dexedrine. And I took it and I remembered in high school going, yeah, sure. Like, oh yeah, like my room is impeccably clean, and all my work is on time, and like, but I grew up. People like one of my attributes that people have always said. My wife disagrees, but a lot of people say I'm funny or whatever. I have a certain type of sense of humor or whatever. I'm telling you, like that type of stuff, like amphetamines, that cuts right through that. I had no personality left. I'd be at school and people would be like, hey, Ollie, like up to the same things. And I'd look at them and I'd give them the fake, like, yeah, and right back to my schoolwork, right? Like I just wasn't even myself. So I put that on the shelf, like after probably 6-8 months back in high school. Well, it's still on file through my family doctor. So now, like 8 years later, I reach out to my family doctor and I say, hey, like, I could really use this. I got an intense job. It would help me focus, which was legitimate. That's legitimately why I wanted it. So anyways, it comes to a head on this night where I end up abusing the Dexedrine. That's what happened. It was a Friday night and I had been taking it I had been taking too much of it during the week. Hadn't been sleeping well. Not that I needed sleep, because I'd wake up and I'd be like, well, I'm just going to hammer more Dexedrine and I'm like Superman again. And so I got all run down, and then Friday hit and I was run down and I literally treated it as like speed. I said, well, this is prescribed. So, and again, I stopped going to meetings, this, that. So I just took too much of that. And then by the Saturday, I didn't sleep all Friday. By the Saturday, I was calling my dealer and I started back up with the Coke, right? And it was funny because my dealer said, Ollie, why are you calling? I thought I heard from so-and-so that you were in treatment and you were off this stuff. You know what I told him? Oh, I'm picking up for a buddy who's in from out of town. My dealer, I don't think he was literally like looking out for me, but like literally my dealer, there's an opportunity there where the dealer goes, wait a minute. And I'm just like, yeah, no, like, yeah. So anyways, so that, I feel like I've maybe been talking about, getting to the bottom maybe a little too long, but that again, once that picked up, it was all in. It went downhill like so fast, like to the point that I lost my job. I got evicted, massive debt. And I'm talking like 3-4 months. Like it took me 3 months to do like eclipse heading above the damage it had taken the previous 10 years. Like when I broke that last time, I think something inside me went, I'm just going to do this until I can't do this anymore. And like, yeah, my mom, I had my dad calling me saying like, your mom is up rocking herself every night but nothing could connect. Right. I was just like, I remember my mom saying like, are you doing this until you can't do it anymore? And literally for the lack of awareness that I had in my life, like to get to that point, clearly there's a lack of awareness. I was aware enough at that moment to know that the answer was yes. And I said, yes. I said, I am bent on doing this until I literally can't do it anymore, because I am so weak that I can't of my own accord stop. I just can't. Right. So, I thank God that that mentality and that just that place, I think of all these fentanyl overdoses, and that wasn't around, right? And I and I mean, and the way that I went with coke, if 10 years later, 15 years later, I'm born and I'm the exact same, and I walk through fentanyl, I'm probably dead, honestly.
Yep.
I really, honestly, like I really am. And so I have a lot to be thankful for. So everything was done. It was like massive debt, evicted. Like I was evicted. I lost my job and I was evicted within 36 hours. So like literally like there was this like, and I couldn't take care of myself. Like my younger sister's over helping me pack up my apartment, and I can't answer questions. Like I'm like ground zero. Like, I think I might have even had some coke left, and I might have even been going to the other bedroom every once in a while. Like, but I knew it was over. I was just like in those last moments. And then I'll never forget going over to my parents' place and standing off I'll never forget this, standing off in the living room and them saying, just give us a second, and watching them whisper back and forth, and I could pick up that what was happening was one of my parents was like, we need to welcome him with open arms. And the other one was going, I don't think we can trust him. Right. And again, grateful for that. I'm like, look what this is doing. Like so that bottom for me, I don't take credit for that being the end. For some reason, that was the end. I never picked up again. I needed a week sober. I needed to be sober a week so that initial recovery house with the crusty guy would take me in. And so, yeah. And, so I went in for another interview there, and he said, why do you think you use coke again? Right. Like I'm still, I got a lot to learn at that point. And he says, why do you think you use coke? Why do you think you got a problem with coke? Why do you think you got a problem with everything? And all I knew how to answer was, well, I'm lonely. I mean, yeah, at that point I was lonely because nobody wanted to hang out with me. And to be honest, I wasn't looking for like fellowship, because fellowship made it more difficult for me to be the addict that I wanted to be. I wanted to be back in my apartment with the lights out, up for 3 days straight, doing what I did best. And, being part of some community or having friendships was just going to get in the way of that. So I was lonely, but I literally thought somehow my loneliness was driving. And he said, okay. He didn't laugh, but he had a smirk, and he said, "Oh, your loneliness is causing you to use cocaine." I said, "Yeah, I think so." Like, he said, you know why I think you use cocaine the way you do? And I remember thinking, like, this guy doesn't know me. I said, "What's that?" He said, "I think you're an addict." And that was like where I was like, that was the moment that I said, okay, so yeah, okay, so I can't put like the cart before the horse. It's like, it doesn't matter my life circumstances. I've entered into, I'm an addict, right? It doesn't matter if I was, Ivy League raised or ghetto raised or, loved or unloved or, alcohol, or the reality is I can't stop. I'm in a state where I can't get out of it. And so I went into that recovery house, and that's the best thing that's ever happened to me. And and the sad thing is most people will look at that model and they'll just run from it. Why? Because it's live in, right? Like, I didn't have a cell phone. Like, I had no money, no cell phone. I'm in my late 20s and I'm starting life over. Like, no cash, no job, don't know how to live life, don't love myself, no cell phone. And I'm in a recovery house with there's like some rooms are 2 to a room, some are like four single beds to a room. And basically the model is you get up, at the time that you get up, or you're going to find yourself out of the recovery house, and everybody's in there for the same reason, not necessarily the same drug, but you're all addicts and alcoholics and you don't know how to live life. We got 2 morning meetings, 2 afternoon meetings, all in-house, like boot camp meetings. And then guess what? 5, how many? You needed 5 out meetings a week. Ooh. So 2 morning meetings, 2 afternoon meetings, and basically 5 out of 7 days after supper, you were going out to a community meeting. I did that for a year. Okay, sorry. I did that for 2 weeks, and then I did that for 2 weeks. No, I did that for 2 weeks, and then they said, if you can work, go get a job, right? And this is important because this is this whole it comes back to kind of a bigger issue, this whole like the dignity of risk. There's something to be said about when I was up north across country there and they had me locked in for 60 days. I knew I wasn't going to use. Like, I couldn't even leave the building. Like, it was like and I'm not knocking those programs, but I can only speak from my experience. It didn't test me.
Yeah, it's
right?
a bubble.
It's a bubble. And like I said, some good came out of that bubble, and it's part of my story. But 2 weeks of, pretty much 5 meetings a day. So that's a pretty good kickstart. And then go start working during the day, be back by 5:30 for supper, and then go out to your out meeting. That was scary, right? Like, initially I was like, and what made it problematic a little bit was that, because you're out in the community and you're working, like, you're potentially going by old spots or coming across people on, city transit, and they wouldn't know, right? Hey, Ollie, what's up, man? And I'm thinking like, oh, get away from me. Like you might have some on you, or like you might, like, cause it's all about triggers, right? Like, right. Early on, those triggers are, and that's the thing. That's the thing I would say to anybody who's listening and is in the early stages. Please know that obsession of the mind and those triggers that literally bring on, that you might be short of breath, or you're like, you know, you're smoking half a pack of cigarettes, or you're like, I'm not going to get over this. The only way to get over this is to use. Like when you're sober, like it's not like that. Like if recovery was like that, none of us would be sober.
No.
Like that's not how it is. Like that's, you know, but we don't know that early on. We don't understand that like this changes over time. It's not this hard all the time, right? Like, so, you know, getting out there and having enough, you know, rope to do something bad, so to speak, I think was good for me and challenged me. And so I was a year living in the house with the guys, going to work and having mandatory meetings and having, you know, duties around the house. Like, I mean, it's a big recovery center, right? Like, well, I shouldn't say it's big. I think there was like spots for 30 people. So it's not like a facility. It's like a house that was converted into a recovery type center, right?
Gotcha.
Yeah. So it had a meeting room and then a main dining room and then a kitchen. And then everything else upstairs was like rooms with single bed. Anyways, so I was in there for a year, you know, definitely did the steps, got a sponsor, like thoroughly did the steps. And it was by the end of that year that, and this is my journey. This is my story. I said, you know what? I am so experiencing the benefit of a relationship with God, how I understand him, like beyond keeping me sober, it's just helping me be a better version of Ollie. Like I'm being completed. That hole that was there when I stopped sports, right? Like sports was a terrible way of filling that hole. It got me through, but that was just a problem waiting to happen, right? And really, it is God and what the reality of God and the hope that I have that has just done so much, even beyond recovery, right? Like even the ability to, you know, some of the hurdles and the obstacles that I'm facing in my life right now, they wouldn't be possible. I wouldn't be who I am. I wouldn't be, and I'm not saying that I'm the most principled person, like to a certain degree, we're all hypocrites, right? Life doesn't happen in a vacuum, and you can't like be consistently apply everything all the time. But I believe I am maybe more principled than the average cat out there. And that's only because of my belief in God and absolute truth as I understand it, and a willingness to live by that. And so I because of my desire to better know God, I personally, not everybody does this, and not everybody needs to do this to get, you know, to achieve sobriety. But for me, the next step was like, if God exists, like, who is he? Like, this is just my story is when I see God of my own understanding, I wanted to understand him. And I didn't want like, God is the doorknob and God is the group and God is this and that. But again, I'd want to reiterate, maybe not the doorknob, but like those versions, those can help you get sober. They can. And that's what the program's about. But for me, that spiritual awakening, I was so alive and like, oh boy, this hole is getting filled, that I was like, you know what? All I know about Jesus is, you know, whether he performed miracles or not, a lot of people speak highly about his teachings, and his teachings seem to have really shaped a lot of, you know, Western society to a certain degree. So I picked up the Bible and I read it cover to cover. And then from there, a year after living in the house, I said, you know what? What they have, their model is great. They have the recovery house, and then they bought a property next door, and it was like transition housing. So then it was like, no, you cook for yourself. You've got a basement apartment. You cook for yourself. And honor system, you need like, I don't know, I think it was 3 or 4 out meetings a week. Like they scaled it back. Like they were slowly giving you more. And I said, put me on that list. And I stayed there for another like probably 9 months. So like, honestly, I was around newcomers and long time, sober people for just under 2 years before I finally like fully cut the cord. But a lot of people they're allergic to that. They're allergic to that. They're like, man, like, yeah, I got a problem, but I'm going to do this like on my terms. And don't tell me, like, don't structure it too much. Right. But the reality is that's what, like, I needed that. I was completely, I was bankrupt on all fronts. Right. Like if I'm not willing to do what you're telling me to do, then like shame on me. Like at this point, right. I don't know how to live life. So, but for whatever reason, by the grace of God, I guess I don't know why some people hit the low or the bottom that I hit and then die or end up, on the streets using. I don't have those answers. I don't think any of us do, but I'm grateful that I was willing to listen finally at that point. And then I was willing to go like, I'll just stay connected to this house as long as I can. And like, so yeah, that's kind of my journey to sobriety, I guess. Definitely the steps. And what's interesting is I have so much respect for those steps because although I might not be super connected to, and I'm quite rural here, but that's no excuse. I mean, we all know that there are rural meetings and there's online meetings, and I'm the first to admit I'm not super connected to the recovery community, but everybody that knows me knows my past, and therefore periodically people will say like, hey, can this guy reach out to you and ask you some questions? Or this is the beauty of the steps. The flip side of it is outside of recovery, because these are spiritual principles. As a Christian, there are so many Christians walking around that believe in God, but they're not sober. And I don't mean they're doing coke or they're drinking. I mean like they're full of resentment and they don't know how to forgive. And right, like they understand, they can conceptualize like their relationship, like their vertical relationship with God, but horizontally they can still have trouble, even though the Bible lays it out, right? They can still have trouble living like in horizontal relationship. And yeah. I'm so quick to go back and go, listen, this isn't a 12-step thing, okay? But just hear me out, because the work and how it's explained and how it's just like pen to paper here, like it's just so practical and it just cleans house, right? So like even last year I was talking to my wife about something. She's a lifelong Christian, and I could tell something was up, and I'm like, I think there's some stuff there maybe that happened in school, and she's bouncing things off of me, and I'm like, I think that still has a little bit of a hold on you. And then I literally pointed her to some step work, and I said, like, put that all out on paper, process it, deal with it, right? And it doesn't mean that it's going to be gone forever, but it's going to get you on the fast track to better understanding, why are you resentful?
Yeah.
Or why are you actually fearful? Like you're fearful of this initial fear. Let's look at the inventory. Trace the fear back. Ultimately, that fear is what? Well, it's actually a fear of this. Why are you afraid of that? Let's go down. And when you get the root of the fear and you tackle the root, oh my goodness, like life is like that Dexedrine pill's got nothing on.
Yeah, man.
If I thought that was the Superman pill, once you actually clean house and have a better understanding of yourself and you apply that, not even trying to get sober, just trying to win, right? Like win at life, like push yourself and experience emotion and failure and go like, ooh, that hurts, but that's okay. And like, just live life, right? Like the steps are just so good at that.
Yeah, yeah, and I don't know if y'all have it up there, but Celebrate Recovery is a program that I've seen really bring more people into the process of 12-step recovery, and not just for substance abuse. I mean, we're talking about people who show up to Celebrate Recovery with I don't know, a porn addiction, or
Yeah.
who knows,
Yeah.
and they're benefiting. And I always think it's funny, like, I don't know if you're real hip on like AA's background or not, but Bill W., I mean, we more or less ripped off the 12 steps from people practicing old school Christianity. I
Yeah.
think it was like 8 absolutes or 7 absolutes. And then they kind of, took that. And then from that originated the 12-step recovery process. And so it's going full circle now.
Yeah.
It started
Yeah.
out there. Now it's coming back there,
Yeah.
But it is a design for living, that
Oh, for sure.
everybody can benefit from. Because man, I got so conditioned to place blame on everything else outside of me, right?
Yeah.
And until I realized that if I'm not the problem, there isn't a solution, I'm bound to be suffering.
Yeah.
You know?
Yeah.
How's that little recovery house doing? Is it still around, or
Yeah.
it
I
is?
still get emails because I'm still on their newsletter. And I'm across the country. If I wasn't across the country, I'd be going for at the very least on my anniversary or whatever, because they always have like a monthly, if your birthday, your sobriety dates on this month, then they have everybody back. But it's that model, they're still there. They've opened up a secondary location because this was it was a men's recovery house, all male. And I mean, I needed that too, right? Like I was like, yeah, I didn't know how to have healthy relationships with females. And, that, and that was the thing about the recovery house, right? Like even like, like 8-9 months sober, coming in, 15 minutes before curfew. And then, the guy grabbing me like, hey, Ollie, come in here. And then me going, yeah, what's up? And, the counselor or whatever on staff going, man, you're cutting it close tonight. Like, hate to see something bad happen to you because you're not following the rules. I'm like, oh, no, yeah, no, I was checking the time. And then he's saying, what were you up to? And me telling him like, oh, I went out with this girl. And he's like, oh, yeah, you're spending time with ladies, eh? And I'm like, yeah. And just challenging me, right? And going, yeah, you know what? Like, you be careful because that gal becomes your program and you're going to be, face full of coke in no time, right? And just being so raw. And that's the part that I don't take credit for. It's just I was able to take it at that point. Like I just, in all those other years, I would have gone, you don't get me, or no, but that whole time in that recovery center, I was like, even a year sober. When I moved next door, I moved next door to that house in that basement suite. I went to a meeting that night and I bawled. And I didn't see that coming because I was scared. Literally. I'm a year sober, but I've just changed my environment and I'm no longer sharing a room with other guys. And I know that there's a counselor in the building. Like I thought, I got this, man. I'm a year clean. People say wow, a year, that's big. I moved next door. I last one day and I'm at a meeting. Literally, I remember kind of crying and saying I'm not sure I'm going to make it. That's how I felt. Right.
Yeah.
And, and then it took a couple days and I went, okay, I got this, but it just goes to show when you, yeah, when we do something for 10, 12 years and, a year clean is great, but you're not out of the woods. Right.
Right.
And And I'm not out of the woods today in the sense that, like, I get random thoughts like, oh, like, come on, Ollie, you're in fellowship with Jesus every day. Like, you read his words, you feel him, you know that you have a family, you have little ones that look up to you. Your wife never knew you that way. You lead a home church. Like, you could have a glass of wine at some function or something. And then I stop and I'm like, why on, like, first of all, like, I'm not, like, first of all, it comes back to what I said earlier, right? Actually, there's a story in the back of the big book that I have never forgotten, and it's important for me because, I'm not here to say that because I'm not actively in, 12 step meetings and that it's okay for you not to be. I can't speak for other people. I'm just saying my life has unfolded a certain way. But because I don't have that, and because I'm not walking into rooms and seeing the newcomer, I am at a heightened risk of forgetting where I come from. But I have never forgotten the story at the back of the big book where the guy, I think he has like 30, maybe even 40 years sobriety. And he retires and he puts on his little carpet slippers and he goes, you know what? I made it. And I just got retirement to look at now. I'm just going to wake up every morning and, have a little bit of, and the guy's dead in like 2 years, right? I never forgot that story because, like I've learned in the past when trying to get sober, what makes me so different, right? Why is it because I feel that I'm close to God and I've got all these peripherals in my life that set me up to try and make better decisions? I can't outrun the fact that I pick something up. It makes me feel real good. And I don't really want to test God. If I pick something up that makes me feel real good, am I going to choose to run back to you? Or am I going to run back to, my old higher power? Like, yeah. I'm just not willing to gamble. Right. So I'm not out of the woods and, I'm 14 years clean and I'm not ever tempted. A couple years back, there was a work function and I was still in the military. So the whole like chain of command thing's kind of like important. And I had like a really senior officer walk over to me and I had taken this piece of cake and they're like, oh, you got some of my cake there. You like it? I was like, oh, I haven't started. And they're like, oh yeah, have some. So I start eating it. And then it just hits me. Right. And it was half panic. It was rum cake, but I'm talking like
a lot of rum.
Like, yeah, like, oh, I better put a little bit of cake on top of this. Right. Like, and that heat from the rum hit me and it just, you get flashbacks and it's like, whoa. And, I'm not the type to sit there and go, oh no, like what have I done? Or does this mean I'm not clean? Like, come on, man. Like you're having a piece of rum cake. But the problem was, and this is, I should have known better. I should have just gone, you know what? I'm in recovery. I'm, I don't know, 10, 11 years, whatever it was at that point. I shouldn't have this, I'm human. I went, oh, this person is looking at me and, I'm just going to have a couple of, honestly, man, but I was 3/4 of the way done that piece of rum. I was feeling the effects. My head was, well, I have no tolerance.
Right.
So I was like lightheaded. My face was warm, completely foreign to me. Like this is not a feeling I have had forever. So I just bought a little bit of time and the minute they turned their back, like I chucked the thing in the garbage, right? And I was like, if I finish that piece of cake, I'm going to be calling my wife to come get me. Like, so talk about zero tolerance. But, like, yeah, anyways, yeah. No, it's like, I hope I've stayed away from what qualified me. Like I definitely, I hit cocaine hard enough that definitely the brain was rewired. Cocaine, took me down, a path really, really dark, and really, removed me from the stream of life. And I became all consumed with myself. And the way I describe it is just very, very much of the flesh. Like, just, I want to feel this and that. And it was just never enough. And, today, the steps got me sober. The steps opened the door to the relationship with God that I have today, because it cleared everything out of the way. And I do believe, right, and this is kind of apart from the literature, but as a Christian, I do believe that, it's not necessarily that I did the steps and therefore I found God. I do think God was just waiting there, right? And I'm thankful for that. And I know he did a work in me, and he continues to do a work in me. And life's really good. I'm not free of resentment. But I'm quicker to forgive. Like, and that I get, maybe that's the advantage in a way of hitting bottom like that, is I do have an ability to be more gracious. And so if somebody does something, it's kind of twofold, right? If somebody does something to me and rubs me the wrong way, there's two things. Well, there's two things that should happen, or there's two things that I can do, either or. Really, I should do both. One is, if I have a resentment, I should go to them,
Right.
because it's going to help me, and it's going to hopefully help them. But even if I don't choose to do that, recognizing where I've come from, what I was capable of, and who I was, they're definitely, what they've just done, whatever offense they've just created, is definitely nowhere near to the type of human being that I was. And so, like, if I can't forgive them and get over it, then shame on me, right? Like, that's like, who am I to just forget where I've come from? So there's normally I'll address a resentment if I can tell, like, that's not working. Like, I can't forgive your offense, then normally I'm going to come to a place where I'm going to have to level with somebody and go, hey, I need to clear the air. And normally that works out pretty well, right? I find, like, we build it up that it's going to go a certain way. Oh, I'm going to say, hey, I didn't appreciate that. And then they're going to go, what's your problem? Like, you're so sensitive. And then I'm going to go, well, what's your problem? And we've already created this whole other conflict. And then I end up saying it, and normally the person's not even aware. Oh, I said that, or I did that. Oh, sorry, man. It's like, wow, I would have stewed on that for how long? Like,
yeah.
So, yeah.
Man, that's one of those things that you kind of learn how to do with time. And there's certain parts of my life that I still try to work at. So, like that 4th step, making the inventory and talking about resentments, like I just got through completing probably my 10th or 11th 4th and 5th step I've ever done in my life. And this is the first time that 2 names didn't show up that have shown up on every other one.
That's good.
Yeah. So that's great.
And that's tangible, right?
Mm-hmm.
And that's what I mean. That's what I said earlier when I said, like, the steps are so, like, the whole, like if you say to somebody, like, who do you have unforgiveness towards? Somebody's going to sit back in their chair and go, I don't know. I don't think, right? Or if you give them a piece of paper and a pencil, and you say, like, I bet you there's at least one person that you haven't forgiven about something, and you make it concrete that way, and it's an actual exercise. It's not just some, like, fleeting comment or question. Mm-hmm. There's something to that, right? And I mean, maybe it's also because of the visual nature of it, but it's like these emotions and these feelings, and you're, like, crafting it. and going, you're looking at it. I remember being on the back steps of that recovery house and talking to my sponsor and on the phone, my sponsor going like, what are you upset at your sister for? Why are you like, I was like, oh, like, she had a way of like creating chaos in the house. And when we were both younger, like I kind of played by the rules and she would cause strife. And then maybe I'd go to my parent and they were on edge because of my sister. And, I'm kind of resentful that like, she just created that kind of atmosphere in the house. He's like, okay. So what did you do growing up as her older brother? Like, did you go and tell her that or coach her or like try and, I don't know, be a big brother? And like, I was like, well, no. He's like, okay, so you resent her when you didn't in any way pour into her or try and change that. And I'm like, and so that was the first aha. With that situation, I went, oh, yeah, I'm kind of focused on how I kind of failed her in that instead of just pointing the finger. And then he took it a step further and he said, I can't tell you this is true, Ollie. And I don't know that it's true, but I'm going to ask you to take a long look at this. Do you think that growing up and you feeling like you were the one that was kind of getting along and maybe viewed a little bit better, and she was the one causing problems, and like, do you think there was a part of you that, or even maybe to this day, still enjoys the fact that maybe you were viewed a little bit better, right? And then I put all that together and I was like, and all of a sudden I was looking at that resentment, and instead of actually being like, by then I'm a grown adult and we're all out of the house. So how much I resented her, I don't know, but I threw it down, right? Because I didn't want to miss anything. If it was borderline, I was writing it down. Yeah. And if it's not real, then somebody will go, nah, you're probably writing too much. Don't worry about it. But I'll do more, right? And all of a sudden that resentment was like, wow, I'm kind of I'm a piece of trash. Like, right. And, but that's the whole thing, is looking, but not I'm a piece of trash. Like, whoa, me, I'm a piece of trash. I'm a piece of trash. Like, shame on me. Okay. I'm going to apply what I've just learned to like all kinds of things. Let's move forward. It's these awakenings without the old me going, see, I'm a piece of trash. That's why I'm lonely. And I, do cocaine. It's like, no. It's like it's a different type of awareness, right? Yeah. It's the ability to face the truth. Whereas before it was like, I can't handle the truth. That's why I use, right? Now it's like, give me the truth, because then I'll work it out and I'll be stronger, and and then I'll be able to live life. So let's just, right? But it is uncomfortable. So the step work's uncomfortable. That's why they say get a sponsor, and it does, right? Like, and it can trigger for sure. Step work can trigger you. There's people that go and they do. Some people unfortunately walk right out of a step and go and use, right? It's heavy stuff. Yeah. But I mean, wow, what a life. Like, honestly, what a life. Like, just the somebody used an analogy once, like, it's a perfect Canadian analogy. So is it easier when a snowstorm's coming in? Is it easier to go out a few times and kind of borderline sweep that snow off the driveway, or to wait until it accumulates and then try and, like with that snow pusher, try and push that compact, heavy stuff? It might be better to quickly run out there a few times every couple hours and just, right? It's the same thing with, keeping, like doing step work or cleaning house. Like, it's easier to just maintain this stuff. But initially, everybody comes into it going, it's not maintaining. I might be addressing this for the first time in my life. Yeah. So that's snowfall, man. We're talking drifts, like, right? Like, yeah.
Yeah, if you don't stay on top of it, you don't. Here's the thing. So like in working these steps and you practicing Christianity, what you're doing is you're training your mind to notice those shortcomings. You're training your mind to kind of notice these areas of your life that just if they weren't examined, it would go completely unnoticed. And in the process of doing that, man, once you acknowledge a certain pattern, and it could be just something as tiny as what you just mentioned, but then it's like bam, that's that key that unlocks all of these different situations that you've struggled with. I know that I'm going through it, man. So like I work an NA program, and we have a step guide with like numbered questions, right? And on my sixth step, that's, we're talking about defects of character, and there's a question on there that says, is there a defect that you are unwilling to let go of, or that you think that you can control or remove? And I have answered that question so many times. No, nothing new has changed. This is the same defect that's been in my life forever. But I answered that yes this time, and not only did I answer it yes, but I had an entire reasoning on why I'm wanting to be rid of it now. Like, I would not have gotten to that point if I didn't have that accountability in my life and I didn't have those people pushing me to continue examining it. You know what I'm saying?
That makes total sense. And it even makes sense. It even makes sense, like within Christianity, because there's a verse that says, like, different people are given different measures of faith. And the way that I interpret that is not like different measures of faith, let's say within Christianity, like as it applies to faith in Jesus, but like how you're walking that out. What does conviction look like? What are you dealing with right now? Right. And so, like, much like, the convictions that I've experienced, this has to do with more morality, and maybe we don't need to go there, or whatever, the Christian morality, I should say. But like, I mean, I'm not the same Christian today that I was, when I was a Christian after 1 year, right? Like, what one big area would be things that I view and listen to. Over time, I have become more sensitive to them, right? I'm more mindful of what am I using to entertain myself, and what I use to entertain myself, how does it shape my character or shape my thoughts, right? Initially, I wasn't there, right? Like, and it's the same reason why I wouldn't be quick to judge. Like, and again, this is within Christianity, but like, I wouldn't be quick to judge somebody who says like, oh yeah, man, I'm Christian. And then I'm going, oh, you watch that program. Oh, I wouldn't watch that program. I think that would make me uncomfortable. Okay. But like, it's a journey, man. Like, it's right. And yeah, so no, I totally get that. And I can understand how something new will pop up. And sometimes we don't realize it, but the brain is a powerful thing. And, when we experience trauma, or when we do really bad things and we have an inability to process the fact that, like, I did that, and I might forgive myself and know that I'm not that person anymore, but I can't, that memory, or the fact that I physically did that, or I'm responsible for that, does not get obliterated. It is a fact. It has happened. That causes stress, right? And the brain has a way of, like, we may think like, I'm going after everything. I'm not leaving any stone unturned. But what we don't realize is the brain might be leaving stones on things, and we're not able to access it, right? Like, it's very, yeah. And then eventually, like, all of a sudden, maybe there's enough stability in our life, or we're in a good enough place where, whoa, that's not being suppressed anymore, or explained away, or hidden. I think I'm willing to acknowledge maybe I have something to address there. So it's not necessarily that before we willingly said, I'm not ready for that. It just literally wasn't coming, right? And I think it's because the brain has a way of doing that. It's like it's the brain wants to protect itself, right? Like it's the reason people with PTSD or whatever, sometimes they like can't remember. The memories are there, but they're not accessing them because the brain's going, if you access this, you're going to come undone. Like, right. So yeah, the brain's also very complicated. So there's a lot even in the, I guess, I don't know if that's called physiological, but there's that aspect too, right? Which is part of the hurdle to early recovery. Is it's like the spiritual malady plus, depending on what you've been doing and for the length of it, you're not healthy. Like you're kind of you're not thinking straight. Like you're literally like I got to a place where I had like auditory hallucinations. Let's just say that. I got to a place where the extent of my cocaine usage and things I was incorporating in that, or whatever I had built around myself, like I would hear things later.
Wow.
And I was convinced, like, okay, is that happening in the apartment next to me? Or I don't know, like, right? Clearly the brain has been rewired at that point because it was not happening. Like I realized very quickly I'm imagining things, right? So we know the brain, like it, yeah. So that needs to heal too and be rewired over time. So there's a lot to do in early sobriety, right?
Yeah. Yeah. Without a doubt. Let's segue into that other part real quick because I wanted to talk about what we were talking about before we hit that record button.
Oh, okay.
About kind of how has kind of this lifestyle of recovery and really, self-examination, how is this transferring into kind of some of the external pressures that you're facing currently, along with the mandates and some of the decisions you've had to make as far as your job goes? Do they correlate at all, or?
Yeah, I think so, because part of the hole that I had growing up was very much, I didn't get into it too much, but growing up, I didn't realize that it wasn't normal sadly, I think it's probably more normal than we realize, but it wasn't healthy to care so much about what other people think of you, or to rely on external affirmation to create self-worth and love, right? So growing up, I was like the high and low, like, oh, I told a joke and the guy rolled his eyes, now they all think I'm a loser. Or I told a joke and everybody laughed and said I was funny, and now I'm like sky high euphoric all evening at home. That's not normal. Like that's not, you can't sustain that. Like that's not. So with I do attribute it to born again, in the sense that there's that Christian, Christianese talk about being born again, like being made new, but it's also that born again in the sense that like that old person is gone, literally. It doesn't mean that he doesn't ever try and rear his head, and then I have enough sobriety and enough tools and things to recognize it and that's a lie, or that's an old behavior that's trying to crop up. But because of that, because I no longer have that hole, it's been replaced with God, and being able to forgive myself, being able to know that although I can't undo the past, if anybody holds my past against me and goes, well, this is where you come from and this is who you are, so this is how I will treat you, I have no control over that, and I can never guarantee that will never happen. But I can walk away from that and say, that's not my problem. That's your problem. I'm forgiven. I know I'm forgiven. I've forgiven myself, and I've put enough distance between me and those past behaviors that I know categorically that is not who I am. If you believe people can't change, then you need to expand your network, because people can change, right? So it definitely impacts today, because I am able today to look at people, and we're living under times where, COVID has, I don't know what you said before you clicked record. You said it's broke people, or I don't know what you said.
Broke
Yeah.
people's brains.
Oh, they're like, I mean, and it's even worse up here in Canada, because it's very, like, at least down there, you kind of have state rights, and like, depending on where you are, the culture can change a little bit. But like, imagine your bluest states, that's Canada. Like, and control is very centralized in Canada. So it's really at that federal level. Provinces don't really hold much weight. So I'm living in a very, left-wing progressive place. So all of these COVID measures, for the most part, it's like, well, you got to do your civic duty and, protect everybody. And what do you mean you might be hesitant around an mRNA vaccine? Like, it's been deemed safe. That should be enough. You're not a doctor. Like, all these types of things. Sorry, I'm just checking the power here. All these types of things. So the old me would have said, well, I can't stand on my own 2 feet and, either face the majority of people in my country, or my community, or my neighbors, or even my family. Sorry, Drew, you probably see me walking around here,
No,
trying
good,
to get
brother.
the power for the, there's no way I can face that. Like, I'm going to crumble, right? Like, they're all going to judge me. They're going to say, oh, look, Ollie, he's one of those guys that thinks he's got the world figured out. Like, how dare he, right?
Yeah.
And also, I'm not willing to experience hardships, i.e., loss of income, because I'm not following the mandate at work and they're placing me on unpaid leave. Like, that's too stressful. Like, that's too hard on me. So it does have an effect on today, because what recovery has taught me, what a relationship with God has taught me, is that, and actually what libertarianism has taught me, and just, I guess, I'm approaching my mid 40s. I don't care what anybody says. Time in doesn't guarantee like wisdom, but it doesn't hurt if you're looking around you and you're actually like, trying to learn from mistakes and look at the world. Like, really, by the time you're in your mid 40s, you should have a little more, to go on. All of this comes together to say, the masses, or the majority, does not make something right. I don't need the majority to approve of me, for me to feel good about myself. And, what recovery has taught me as well is, this kind of leads to, currently being unpaid and at home and away from work, is, although that's causing some stressors and some hardships, doing the step work and doing the step work in early recovery, when you just felt like this is so unnatural and how can this possibly be the right thing to do, what that ended up doing for my recovery, making me the man that I am today, and building character. I can look at this trial, let's say, this wow, on paper, this doesn't seem like a very good thing to do. I got 5 mouths to feed. But I can take a step back and go, anything that builds character, anything that allows you to stand on principle, anything that you can look to, at least those that do support you, like my kids and my wife and my in-laws, and because my side of the family views COVID a little bit differently than I do. But any opportunity to experience a little bit of discomfort, as long as you know deep down why you're doing it, and the net benefit outweighs any, potential harms. Like, I view that as beneficial. Like, life is not about maintaining and advancing every little comfort I could possibly want. Because if life is about maintaining comfort, then what I'm doing right now, that doesn't go along with that game plan, right? No,
right.
To me, life is about, see, we all have our own, I think maybe everybody, or maybe people don't, I don't know. There's this recurring thing that always rolls into my head, and it's rolled in for a long time now, since becoming sober. It's, I always see myself, I hope that I go, like, when my years are up, I hope that I go, like, somewhat peacefully, and I have time to reflect on my life and say goodbyes. I hope I don't, like, die on the highway in a crash. But the thing is, I can almost see what types of things would I regret. And a lot of how I try and live life is when I know, okay, I'm doing this right now, and if I continue this way, I'm going to be on my deathbed in maybe 30, 40 years from now, whenever, and I'm going to potentially look back and go, Ollie, you knew you wanted to do that, or you knew that was not the right thing to do, but you didn't go through with it, right? I don't want any of that. And I think that, as scary as it is, because we live in an affluent age and an affluent part of the world where comforts abound. And, with a little bit of hard work and a little bit of, like, addicts are very ingenious, right? And we're very smart, very people smart, know how to manipulate. It's not hard to advance. I find it's not hard to advance comforts. It really isn't. But is that really life? And so like for me, and we all have our stories. Like, I shared with you, I'm not against vaccinations. I told my employer I'm waiting for a protein-based vaccine, and there's not one available right now, but there's one supposedly coming. And I gave them all the information. This is a reputable plan, and I'm able to work from home. Will you approve this? And they said no. And the minute they did that, after the fact that I kind of shared my heart like that, I wasn't sure how I was going to react. Like, I was leading up to that, I was thinking, I had really been reading up on mRNA, and, maybe some people will hate me for saying this. I don't really care. None of us know categorically what the long-term outlook is for mRNA. mRNA might be used to combat cancer. Maybe it's going to end up being some kind of wonder methodology that gets applied to different things and is a benefit. But all I know is, as far as this vaccine against COVID, as I mitigate risk, I'm not comfortable with the fact that I can only take an mRNA vaccine right? So the minute, but I was warming up to it because I was reading up on it, and I was really trying to, like, I want to be balanced. I don't want to, you and I talked about that binary thinking earlier, right?
Yeah.
It's this or this. Like, you're either against, mRNA, or you think, you're kind of like that collectivist mentality, take care of your neighbor, get the shot. Life's not like that. We all process things differently. And, for me, once I said, I'm not quite there with the mRNA vaccine. I literally said this in my request to my employer. I said, I'm working through some anxieties around the mRNA vaccine. I'm not quite there. My preference is for a protein-based vaccine. I can work from home until I'm right. So that's about as above board as anybody can get. Like, yeah. I'm talking I've spilled it. And I don't think I even owed them all that, but I gave them all that, right? And for them to turn around 40 minutes later and say, like, no, refuse, like, it's deemed safe, just take your shot. That's when I came home and I looked at my wife and I said, okay, I didn't know how this was going to unfold, but now they've removed my ability to consent, because I will never know if I take the mRNA one, was I actually comfortable, or did I just want to not lose my income? So they have actually ruined a fundamental principle of like healthcare. And it was at that point I said, I'm just feeling a strong conviction that we need to take a stand against this. And she was like, okay. So, I don't know if I mentioned in the pod. Yeah. Did I mention that I work for the federal government?
Yeah.
At the beginning? Yeah. So, I mean, I'm sure everybody can acknowledge, like, is that a battle I can win? I don't care. It's not about that. It's about knowing that, I took a stand and said, fine, put me on leave without pay. I hope it's really uncomfortable. And I hope you, I hope you, I don't think they care, but I know my children are looking, and I know, like, how does that look for my kids when we've included them in all of this? And we're like, yeah, kids, we're holding off the mRNA and this is why, and we're waiting for Novavax or protein-based and this and that. And then they look at me and they're like, oh, daddy's work said he was going to stop getting paid, so he ran out and just did it. Yeah. I'm not judging people who did that. That's not my concern, and it's none of my business. I'm just speaking for myself. It's like the short-term loss of income, right? I'm sowing seeds somewhere else. My kids are learning principled stances. And I know my wife is like, I support you. I'm sure she respects it. Obviously, otherwise she would have said, like, well, I kind of worried about the money. She has never mentioned it. So absolutely. And you know what? Just to piggyback that, I wrote that children's book recently. I would have never been able to do that before, because that children's book hits progressives hard, their narrative and their agenda and what's being pushed in the school systems. I mean, I think I do a very good job of almost being able to say, no, that's not what my book's about. Like, I could probably back out of it and go, oh, I don't know what you're talking about. I'm just, but to inquiring minds, they can read between the lines. I would have never challenged the system that way. The old Ollie would have gone, oh, well, somebody's going to call me out and say I'm a bigot or I'm hateful or I'm a fascist and today, like, I know I'm not a bigot. I know I'm not intolerant. I mean, tolerance is living with those who you disagree with. Who on earth, like, is practicing tolerance nowadays more than, like, some Christian guy like me who's, like, looking at the world around him going, wow, Christianity ain't popular, but I got to live with everybody, right? I am practicing tolerance, but they throw around intolerance because what they mean is you don't agree with what we're saying. You have a different take, so you're intolerant. Well, I'm sorry, folks. Maybe pick up a dictionary, because in classic, like, they're just redefining terms constantly. That's not what that is. So, yeah, absolutely. A lot of the things that I do today, there's a new ability to withstand pressure. And, like, even when I put some articles out on Mises, like, one day I just was like, oh, there's comments, like, people are actually commenting on the article. It's like, I won't do that again because, like, you know what I mean? Like, I thought I had a good article, but I mean, clearly, I mean, I was called like a pseudo intellectual and this and that.
Oh man.
First of all, I never said I was smart. I've never once said I'm a smart guy. So whatever. But you know, that is proof of being like a new creation or a new person. Is literally, I read that article or the comment, and I went, "Oh, that's really attacking me." And it still stings. It's not like I'm calloused and I go, well, I could care less, but it stings for like a millisecond. And then I detach and I go, I don't care. Like, some people might like the article, and or I don't know that person, and or maybe if that person was face to face with me, they would never say that, right? But at the end of the day, like, not everybody's going to like me. And in fact, some people will actually hate me. That I am guaranteed of, not only because of the things that I stand for today and, you know, my faith and, well, I mean, just the color of my skin and the fact that I'm male in some circles, like, I'm just hated. And that's too bad for them because they're believing lies and they're full of hatred, right?
Yeah.
So literally what I have learned about hatred is like, you're the one that pays the price when you hate, right?
Mm-hmm.
When you don't forgive and when you're hateful and you're resentful, you're the one with all the garbage, right? You're sipping your own poison. So, you know, so anyways, yeah, I guess that was a long-winded way of saying absolutely. And that's what I meant earlier when I said like all of this, you know, fixing the spiritual malady, having a relationship and faith in God. And for anybody new or anybody who's not comfortable with Christianity, then, you know, God can be different things to different people. Like this program, the steps, the cleaning house, relationship to something greater than ourselves, like well after, you know, putting the bottle away or, you know, burning the dealer's number. I mean, life just gets better and better, and we can take on more challenges. And when we fail, because we will, it doesn't sting as much, right? Like the amount of times growing up that I didn't do things just because I was afraid of failing, like talk about regrets, right? That's what I'm talking about. Like looking back at your life going, I had all these good ideas, all these great ambitions, but literally the failure of somebody saying that's not good or me not being able to do it would so floor me that I'm just not even going to do it. That is so far from like how I live my life today. Like if anything, I'm like ADHD, got too many things going on. Like, oh, I got an idea. Yeah, I should do that. Right. Like I'm like the other, like, yeah.
Yeah. All right. So, I think the most profound thing you laid on me during this, and I appreciate you for saying it so much, is just talking about like the past and how like if somebody's holding that up against you, that's on them. That's something that I struggled with for a long time, especially having a background, you know, having a criminal background, man. And I think that's something that we can move forward with. One thing I was going to, my last question that I had for you that I ask all my guests who share their story, and you somewhat kind of talk to them, but I want you to take a second to address the person in the audience who was trying to get sober, but just cannot push past that barrier. What words do you have to say to them?
It's not your fault, okay, it's not your fault that although you look at others who are doing whatever you're doing recreationally and seem to be able to put it down and be functional, it's not your fault that you can't copy that or mirror that. We don't know why, but some of us, there's kind of this allergic reaction, right? And we just can't stop. That's not your fault. And that will never change. But what can change is your preoccupation with doing it, whether or your preoccupation with it, period. Whether that's when am I going to get it next, or I'm just coming off of it and I feel terrible. The fact that your life, it's so controlling your life, that obsession of the mind and preoccupation with it, and any physical feelings that come from that, that, oh boy, it's Friday, I just got off, work, and it's payday, and I said I wasn't going to this weekend, and my wheels are spinning, and my heart's in my gut, and all of that will change. That is not forever. So just know that the only reason that I am sober is because I have recovered, and I have recovered from that, which allows me to live life. And if I get a thought of, having a glass of wine or whatever, it's just a thought. I acknowledge it, I dismiss it, right? But for whatever reason, I can't change the fact that if I have a glass of wine, I'll probably already be thinking of, I wonder what the second glass would feel like, right? I can't change that. And if you're truly an addict and an alcoholic, you won't be able to change that element as well. But if you can get over the obsession of the mind and the preoccupation with it, then that's a non-issue because you won't pick up anymore. And that's really what I would tell them. And that's what I would tell them. And I think I'd just leave it there. Really, I don't know what else to. That to me is ground zero. That's the hurdle. Is this is just life. This is a life This is a life sentence. And maybe the newcomer, all they know is how to be dry. So I haven't used or drank, and I feel like punching my spouse. Well, that's not recovery. That's not sobriety, right? That's what you have to understand. That's not what the program offers. No, that would be the most terrible program ever. We're here to help you stop drinking so that you can be violent and wreck all your relationships. What kind of program is that, right?
Right.
Yeah.
No, that is an excellent point. And that's the one thing, man. So we've seen different medications come out in recent years, especially in regards to alcoholism and addiction, promising to take away the obsession to use. But really what we learn is how to not only have that obsession to use lifted without having to use any type of medications to get there, but we learn a new way to live so that obsession doesn't return. That's a huge, huge important thing that you laid out there.
I would say and the newcomer's probably not there, and they're probably not thinking of this, but honestly, beyond sobering up, if you want to become a better you, do these steps.
Yeah.
Honestly, if you want to change your life beyond I want to stop drinking or drugging. I'm not entirely sure that I was happy with the guy once that's left over. I promise you do the steps and you will be a better version of yourself. They'll help you gain awareness and not focus on yourself so much, and hopefully forgive yourself. And they definitely work.
Yeah, get your foot off your neck. That's the big thing that I was told. Me still get told that.
Yeah.
But okay, so how can people support you, especially right now in your life? What's a way that our listeners and our audience can really help you and yours have a great Christmas?
Well, there's the Liberty Quill. I'm coming up on kind of renewing all the URLs and the platforms. If anybody wanted to go to libertyquill.com. There's a support page. You could make a little contribution there financially, and that would at least help pay. I mean, I'm committed anyways. I'm going to renew everything because Liberty Quill is kind of like a love project. But if people want to contribute and kind of try and make it so I'm not so out of pocket, they could go there. Aside from that, if you go to the book on Amazon, the book's on Amazon. It's Strawberries Are Red, a story about compelled speech. Or you could just go on Amazon and search Ollie Adamson and you'll see the book come up. I can definitely use the royalties from the book sales. But I think that's pretty much it. Or you can always follow me on Twitter and just, make me laugh. That helps too, right? So on Twitter, my handle's at Mr. Oliver Adamson. And I go with the Mr. because I figure within my lifetime it'll probably be offensive. So I figure might as well use Mr. and Mrs. while we can. So it's true. Like, honestly, that's literally why I put it on there. It was like a tongue in cheek. Well, I'm going to say Mr. Oliver Adamson because the way we're going, like, that's going to peeve somebody off. So
yeah, it probably will, man. Eventually, if it hadn't already.
Yeah.
That's the thing. Well, Ollie, thanks a lot, man. This has just been a fun conversation, and you're very easy to talk to. And thank you for everything that you do with helping the next person. And thanks for spreading that wisdom and laying it on me, man. I took a lot away from this.
I'm happy, and I appreciate the time and opportunity to get to meet you a bit. Like we had interacted a little bit, but obviously a face-to-face goes a long way. So.
Yeah, absolutely, man. Well, you're welcome back on anytime you want. So you got any kind of new project you're kicking off, you holler at me.
Appreciate that.
All right, brother. Have a good one.
You too.
All right, and there you have it. Thanks again to Ollie for coming on and spending so much time talking to us about not only what he's learned, but kind of his perception of the world around him. Those are the types of conversations that I really enjoy. And I don't know about y'all, but like this whole podcast has become one of those things that's like on a weekly basis, I'm recording, conversations with people who not only, they impact me in a certain type of way, but also they have a way of like edifying me, right? Like I walk away from these conversations feeling so much better about the world around me. And, this was no exception to that. Like I really, really enjoyed that episode. So be sure and check out the show notes. I'll have all these contact info. And if you are a creator of any sort, like you said, he's, the founder of the Liberty Quill, he's really looking to elevate people within the community who have a particular niche, whether you're a writer or anything like that. Like this dude is the guy to talk to. So be sure and reach out to him. And that's it, man. I just hope that you guys have a great week. I apologize that this came out a day late, but you know what? It is what it is. And I'm going to end with a really chill tune by none other than the Pixies. This song is called Hey. So, y'all enjoy it.
Hey! Been trying